watching us.
You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing lots of politics this evening because we have as our guest Joe Morris. I should say lots of politics and public policy. Joe Morris is Mr. Conservative throughout the state of Illinois. Some would say it extends throughout the Midwest. He is president of the Lincoln Legal Foundation. He was also previously chairman of the United Republican Fund. He ran against John Stroger for the presidency of the Cook County Board in 1994, and reminds me all the time. What did you get, Joe? 500,000 votes?
That's right.
Which was a lot?
500,000.
500,000. That's
still lost.
I'm sure there are a million people out there watching it even as we speak, and they would vote for you in a heartbeat after they saw what happened with John Stroger and then his son Todd Stroger in the last, what are we talking, I guess now, in the last 12 years, right?
I guess I was the Nostradamus of 1994.
So much so, you would think, Nostradamus, you think? What was that? You were the what of 1994?
The Nostradamus of 1994.
Okay. But seriously, folks, he's a partner in the law firm of Morris and De La Rosa, offices in Chicago and London. He has served in the federal government, Assistant Attorney General under President Reagan, also the AG's top assistant for international affairs. That was mostly under Attorney General, then Attorney General Meese. Also Chief of Staff, General Counsel to the USIA, United States Information Agency. Chairs the B'nai B'rith Midwest Center for Public Policy. Is that still the case?
Yes.
So when you want to know, well, we could just go on and on. He's appeared on many programs, Good Morning America, NBC Nightly News, Crossfire, Chicago Tonight, Extension 720, Milt Rosenberg's show, Public Affairs. Previously was not in a show perhaps not unlike this, co-host of Equal Time, a daily show on the Chicago Public Radio. Has 2 degrees from the University of Chicago, first as an undergrad, then at the law school. Joe, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure, Jeff.
I should mention, among the many accomplishments, certainly last but not least, married to Kathy Morris.
That's right.
Okay. That's Kathleen Morris. I started had it right to begin with. But what we'll be talking about here is a House divided. Simply put, Joe Morris, is the Republican Party in Illinois, is it a House divided?
In a sense, it is. It is a party that has grown, unfortunately, excessively comfortable with being in opposition, with being in a minority. And I don't think it's come to grips with the question of how in the 21st century to rebuild itself and offer itself to the people of Illinois as a credible alternative to the kind of mess that both a Republican establishment and the Democrats have gotten this state and its people into. I think it's a myth that it is a party that's divided between left and right. Far more serious than that cleavage, and there are many ways in which those divides can be bridged. Divides over public policy by people who respect each other, not hard to bridge. But the divides that are hard to bridge are the divides between reformers and the establishment. The Illinois Republican Party has spent 4 decades or more as a royalist Republican Party, where it's very hard for many in positions of leadership at various levels in the party to do anything unless it's commanded and approved from on top. This is a legacy of a party that was built by and for to serve the interests of and to re-elect governors. And when that collapsed, and in fact it was a rotten and corrupt structure before George Ryan fell, but with the fall of George Ryan, it's left a tremendous vacuum that it's taking a while and a painful while to fill.
So the division in the Republican Party in Illinois is not between is not between conservative and moderate, right?
There are conservatives and there are moderates.
But that's not the major division.
That's not the major division. And the major division, as I say, is between those who favor reform and a lot of reform, root and branch reform, including reform within the party. And there are plenty of both conservatives and plenty of who are social moderates, so to speak. Moderates as opposed to conservative Republicans, middle of the roaders, or even liberal Republicans who share those views. No difficulty in talking to each other. A governing coalition could be put together of conservatives and moderate Republicans who share reform principles. The difficulty is that so much of the party remains as a legacy of the Ryan era and before in the control of people who are Republicans in name only, Republicans who have no interest whatsoever in the public policy debates.
Who are those people? Let's name names.
Well, two big names are George Ryan and Defendant Cellini, for example. I mean, the people who have allied themselves for decades with the Ryan and Cellini forces, who are active in party affairs simply because it's a way to power, it's a way to jobs, it's a way to contracts, it's a way to pinstripe patronage. Those are people who have never been interested in partisan engagement in the state and never been interested in public policy issues. What animates them is not the politics of conservatism, liberalism, or any other stripe. What animates them is what some people like John Cass like to call the Combine.
But George Ryan is now in jail for the last year or two, serving a 7-year prison sentence. He can't be too much of a problem now for the Republican Party in terms of what he's doing about reform or non-reform. Cellini, as you mentioned, has just been indicted along with Berkowitz and others, and he'll be focusing on that for a while. He can't be too much of a problem for reform. So where's the problem?
Not spend a lot of time on it, but George Ryan was the last Republican governor of Illinois.
Right, but he's in jail now.
When he was governor of Illinois, he salted the party leadership throughout the state, and he salted state government in career and non-career positions.
Name some names, of these people who are bothering
his
him.
loyalists, who remain in important positions in the party and have no particular interest in the ideological kinds of issues that you're trying to raise.
But can you name any of those names? I mean, would we know them? Are they faceless, nameless people, or what?
Well, I'm happy, for example, the Republican leader in the House of Representatives, Tom Cross, I don't think is particularly interested in serious matters of public policy. He's not animated to take the positions he takes because he is a committed adherent of political leftism. I think if there were popular majorities, or he perceived that there were popular majorities behind some position, whether it was a conservative position, a moderate position, or a left liberal position, he would probably adopt it. His interests are not as much in public policy as they are in control of public office, not necessarily in control of majority of public office, but in control of a bailiwick in which he is comfortable.
So is he hostile to reform? Is that the problem, or is it just that he has no philosophy of which he's interested in?
I think that there's been a fascinating legislative fight this year that's been mostly a fight among Republicans. It is a fight over how to elect, how to choose the members of the Illinois Republican State Central Committee. And I think that fight has offered a useful litmus in seeing who cares about what. This may seem to viewers like a lot of inside baseball, but since you've raised the matter, it's worth, I think, spending a couple minutes on.
Senate Bill 600 is how it's referred to.
SB 600 is the legislative vehicle that's pending in the General Assembly right now. Now, a little bit of background is in order. The two major Republican parties in Illinois are each governed by a central committee, the State Central Committee. This sounds terribly Soviet, but actually this jargon goes back to the 19th century in the United States. And in fact, at every level of significance in each of the two parties, there's a central committee. There's a county central committee, a congressional district central committee. The essential governing body of each party in the state of Illinois is the State Central Committee. It's populated, it's composed of members from each of the congressional districts around the state, and in turn it elects the state party chairman, the person who is the CEO and the head of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party in Illinois. Now, until the era of Jim Thompson, both of the major political parties in Illinois chose the members of the State Central Committee the same way, in elections. You wanted to be a State Central Committee, you ran in the primary election of your party, and the voters of your district got to vote whether or not you were a member of the State Central Committee. In the Thompson era, a decision was made to change state law to restrict how the Republican and only the Republican State Central Committee was elected, so that thereafter the Republican State Central Committee was elected not by the people, not by voters, rank and file Republicans coming to the polls to vote for their party's candidates and their party's officers, but instead were chosen by insiders at the lower levels of central committees, that is by the county central committees and district central committees around the state, the Cook County district committees and so forth. Now there is a movement. It started as a grassroots movement to change this, to return the election of the Republican State Central Committee to the grassroots. This was fomented in no small measure by the disastrous election in Illinois in 2004, in which the State Central Committee selected as the Republican candidate for the United States Senate to replace Jack Ryan, who'd won the primary and then had resigned in a somewhat absurd sex scandal. This is the fellow who wanted to have sex with his wife.
And in front of other people, that was the issue.
Presumably.
Public,
Actually,
at sex clubs in front of other people.
Actually, that didn't seem to be the issue. The issue seemed to be whether or not he told the truth about what was buried in marital dispute records in a California court record.
That's what Judy Bart Topinka said, right? And that's what Jim Edgar said, right?
That he fought to keep secret and the Chicago Tribune fought to expose.
Topinka and Edgar were upset that he hadn't told them the truth. Is that what?
Well, that's what they said.
Okay.
Now, frankly, I think it was a silly reason for Ryan to resign his candidacy, but for good or for ill, he did.
But your point is the State Central Committee
helped
dump Jack Ryan, is that right?
More to the point, the State Central Committee had to choose a candidate to replace him, and they chose Alan Keyes with very little vetting in a smoke-filled room in a closed process, where it turns out that there's pretty credible evidence that they chose someone who almost deliberately to try to establish a point which has been the bugaboo of some in the state, that a conservative candidate cannot win a statewide election. So they chose Alan Keyes, a carpetbagger, a fine fellow, a fellow I know very well, a remarkable man. He happens to be African American. I think there was a condescending decision made that because the Democratic nominee, a fellow by the name of Barack Obama, was an African American, that the Republican
It was a bad decision made by the State Central Committee to bring Alan Keyes here. That's your point?
Made by the State Central Committee behind closed doors with no consultation.
And these people weren't elected, and so they were more prone to make the wrong choice. Is this your point?
And they were more prone to make choices for wrong reasons, for bad reasons. So the movement arises, driven by that and by other circumstances, to force a reopening of the party. The Democratic Party in Illinois has always done it right. It's done it from the beginning. The Democratic Party has allowed its rank and file members to choose the members of its State Central Committee. This is something that Republicans used to do, went away from it in the Thompson era.
We can't spend the whole show on this, so let's kind of wrap this up. This controversy over Senate Bill 600. I think you're telling me it came to a vote in the Senate. It passed basically with substantial Democratic support, but the Republican senators were divided on this. Some voted for it, some didn't. Are you telling me that's kind of a litmus test as to who's for reform and who isn't?
I think it is as good a substitute
Do you
as we
have
have at the
that in
moment.
your committed to memory? Because like Bill Brady was here, he's running for governor. Bill voted for it. He said, look, there was a convention. This thing came up at the convention. We're not just a democracy, we're a republic. And the folks at the convention, the Republican convention, that were there to represent the rank and file, rejected the notion of a direct election. That was Brady's justification for himself rejecting direct election. Do you buy Brady's rationale?
I don't. No.
And does that show that Brady's not a reformer?
No. What it shows, I think, is a profound misunderstanding of how the Republican Party is organized around the state and who is actually chosen by rank and file voters and who is not. It is while I certainly believe in the proposition of Republican government, that is representative government, I don't think that the representatives should be at too great a remove from the people whom they represent.
Who else is on your list as not supporting Senate Bill 600 and should be singled out for that?
Well, the person who should be singled out for supporting Senate Bill 600 and for, I think, doing a brilliant job of advancing it, building a coalition of Republicans and Democrats to pass it, is Senator Chris Lawson of Aurora.
Okay, that's for supporting it, but who else is on your list as non-reformers for opposing that in that vote?
Every one of them.
Can you name some names?
Is that what you want, Jeff?
No, I want you to name some names, yeah.
People.
Kirk Dillard, for instance, supported that, so is he now on your list as a reformer? He supported Senate Bill 600, as I recall.
It's an imperfect litmus, but it's more useful than anything I think we have in
All right, so
a record vote to show where people stand on an important test question of reform.
But as you say, that sounds so small. People watching this, and they've seen us devote maybe 5 minutes to this issue, and to you, that represents what the problem is in the Illinois Republican Party. If only Senate Bill 600 passes with stronger support, then all will be okay?
It is, I said, it's the closest thing we have to a litmus
Okay.
of what is of what distinguishes or how to tell reformers from non-reformers. There are a host of issues. You want to talk about other issues?
Yeah, we will go into issues, but just before we do, leader cross in your mind, the minority leader in the State House.
You have pressed me on this show to identify, I don't know why, but you've pressed me on this show to identify Republicans who I thought are on the wrong side of a divide that I've said is not a conservative, a left-right divide. It is a reform, counter-reform divide. Yes, I think leader Cross is on the wrong side of that divide.
And what do you do about it? Do you need to dump him and get somebody in there who is in support of reform?
Yeah, absolutely.
And who do you have in mind? I mean, this is my point to you as somebody outside. I mean, I'm not taking a position either way. If I'm looking at this objectively, it seems like the Republican Party needs to find out who are the right people, get them elected, make them the leaders, and then move forward. Instead, they're just going back and forth for years on Senate Bill 600, one way or the other, and there's no damn change. There's no damn change, excuse my language. I mean, and I'm saying, if Cross is the wrong guy, tell me who the right guy is. Tell me what you and others are doing to get the right guy leader of the House. Is Radonio the right person? Because she supported, I think, Senate Bill 600. Is she
Jeff,
the right person?
No,
and
Jeff,
I'm just trying to see what the Republicans are doing to actually move forward.
You're making a profound mistake here, because you are buying into the royalism that attends that I've said attends on the Republican Party. That it's a question of who. It's a question of who's the name, who's the charismatic leader, who's the white knight. It is not a question of a single white knight who is going to ride out of the forest and resolve.
Well, our group of white knights or something.
No, it's a question of process. It's a question of opening up the process. You're asking me to say, if I were czar, would I decree that somebody is leader? Would I decree that somebody is the Republican leader in the House, or that somebody is the Republican leader in the Senate, or that somebody is the candidate for governor?
Well, do you see it emerging? I mean,
No, Jeff. The mistake that's being made here is the assumption that this has to be dictated. The chairman of the Republican Party has said publicly, that's Andy McKenna, has said that he hopes that there isn't a primary fight among Republicans for governor. This would be a waste of resources. I think he's exactly wrong. I think that the problem with the Republican Party is that there have not been enough internal fights, that we've not had open enough primaries, that we've not had robust enough primaries airing issues.
Is McKenna part of the problem too, as a non-reformer?
Unfortunately, I think he is. Andy McKenna personally is a wonderful fellow. He has been a superb philanthropist, a wonderful private businessman. He's done a number of good things in his career.
Has he been a lousy state chairman?
I think he's been an unfortunate state chairman, and I think that he has not used his offices to do two crucial things that a state chairman should be doing in the current environment. One is to be articulating loudly, strongly, clearly the Republican alternative points of view on serious matters of public policy, including corruption, in a state such as this one, which has been afflicted by the kinds of policies that we've seen coming from Rod Blagojevich, Todd Stroger, and everybody in between. The second thing he has not been doing is opening up the party, inviting new people, new faces into the party, encouraging people to have open primaries at every level, up and down the ladder of state office.
Is there a Republican on the horizon who, I know you've seemed to think it's not important that there be a charismatic leader of the Republican Party, but for those who think that is there a charismatic leader on the horizon in the Republican Party who supports your notions that it's important to have ideas, philosophy, run on those ideas, articulate them? You know, is there anybody on the horizon who might be running for governor who has that kind of inspiration to him or her?
Yes, I think there are. And your next question will be name them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to make Andy McKenna's mistake. I'm not going to try to anoint somebody to be the leader of the party.
Just give me two or three possibilities here.
The people
give some hope to the Republicans who are out there. They're watching this for 10 minutes and they're figuring, what the hell's going on here? There's no meat here.
No, they're wonderful.
They've been chewing on this chicken for 10, 15 minutes and there's no meat here.
Well, that's your fault. I mean, that's...
Well, I'm keep getting to the meat. I'm trying to get to the meat.
No, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get me to anoint either villains or heroes. And I'm telling you that's exactly the problem. The problem is a process problem, not the identity of individual charismatic leaders. If you want to, are there individual charismatic leaders in the Republican Party in Illinois? The answer is yes. There's Peter Roskam, there's Mark Kirk, there's Aaron Schock. There are new faces like Doug Whitley. There's Jim Durkin. There are lots of people, and they're across...
Could any of those people win for governor running as a Republican?
Yes.
All of them? Any of them?
As a matter of fact, I would have to say that in 2010, if the Republican Party cannot win the governorship and cannot win or make a very serious stab at winning the presidency of the Cook County Board, for example, if the Republican Party in Illinois cannot make a serious stab at winning the Senate seat that's currently held by Roland Burris, then you'll see precisely the depth of problems.
Are you
of the party.
okay with Mark Kirk running as the Republican nominee for the U.S.
Am I
Senate?
okay with it? I think Mark Kirk would be a fine nominee.
Does he satisfy those requirements of reform and ideas and philosophy that you're talking about?
Mark Kirk and I do not agree on all issues. We agree.
You don't
on
agree
many.
on any social issues, right?
We agree on many. We agree on less on social issues than we do on foreign policy issues, on our economic issues. Okay. But I think
that's enough for you. You could get behind Kirk as
my
the
old
US
boss, my old boss Ronald Reagan used to say, anyone who agrees with me 80% of the time is my friend and not my enemy.
You agree with Kirk 80% of the time?
Mark Kirk is my friend. Mark Kirk and I agree 80% of the time. I wish I could change his mind on some of the 20% issues on which we disagree.
You agree with Peter Roskam 100% of the time?
Much closer, probably 95 to 98%.
So you'd like to see Peter running for governor?
I'd like to see Peter running for governor. I'd like to see Peter running for the Senate. I'd like to see Peter running to retain the House seat he
But he can
currently
only do
has.
one, so what should he do?
That's up to Peter. That's up to Peter.
Would you like to see Paul Vallis running as the Republican nominee for governor?
Again, Paul Vallis and I don't agree on every issue, but Paul Vallis
80%, you think?
I think that Paul Vallis is an interesting man, a man of some character and distinction. I'm delighted to see that he has declared himself a Republican. I wish he'd spend more time telling the people of Illinois why he now sees himself as a Republican. I think it's a good choice. I think he has a good story to tell, but I think he needs yet to make his case and tell his story.
All right, so tell me on the state level, in 45 seconds or less, what is the Republican brand? What are the three issues they should be running on when they run for governor of the state of Illinois?
Reform, meaning openness, transparency, and the like in how governmental decisions are made. Taxes, cutting taxes, and cutting spending. It's not terribly complicated.
And to do that,
state government in Illinois is being run into the ground at every level, at the state level and at the county level, by leaders who are addicted to spending for reasons about which they lie, and the need simply for transparency. To let the people of Illinois understand what the government really does, how much it really costs, what it really does with their money, and what it does in their name, is the heart and soul of the problem.
I think most would argue, looking forward to the next fiscal year, Illinois has a projected budget deficit of about $8 billion. Do you agree with that number, and what do you think the Republican Party ought to say about how to deal with that deficit?
I agree with that number as being within $1 billion.
Sure, close enough. Yeah.
Of being accurate, which is pretty outrageous. What the Republican Party should be reminding the people of Illinois is that under our state constitution, deficit spending is unconstitutional. It is not permitted, and we could have arrived at this point only by lying to the people of Illinois. It is required the governor, the controller, and the legislature to lie to the people of Illinois about what is actually being spent and where the money is coming from. The money has been borrowed in contravention of the Constitution and laws from pension funds, from what should be set aside restricted funds of the state, and from future taxpayers.
Okay, so what do they do to close that $8 billion deficit?
Tell the truth. Begin by telling the truth.
No, do they need to raise taxes?
No,
need to cut spending? Where would they cut spending?
Radically cutting spending.
Where do they cut spending?
Seriously, just about every account of state spending.
Medicaid, the Republicans have said managed care and Medicaid could probably save you $2 to $3 billion. Do you agree?
I do.
Also raising the contribution for employee pensions from the state employees, maybe another $500 million to $1 billion there. Does that sound right?
Well, I think state employees have a serious stake in this because their pension funds have been raided by the Berkowitz administration in particular. They're facing serious unfunded liabilities that have been magnified by this process of raiding their funds. So I think they have a serious stake in seeing those funds rebuilt.
Is there some way, people say the Illinois Constitution says you cannot cut pensions for employees who've earned those pensions in the past. You could change their pensions for new employees. Is that right? And should some thought being given to, could you remedy that by amending the Illinois Constitution? In other words, the argument is made by many Republicans and others that those pensions are out of whack. They are way more than the state employees deserve based on looking at what comparable employees made in the private sector. And now it's a tremendous burden to try to raise taxes, if that's what it takes, or cut spending to deal with that unfunded liability.
Well, it was a mistake to enshrine that principle into the state constitution. Governments sitting today are always happy to buy labor peace by spending future money. That is, making somebody an offer of some benefit today that won't have to be paid for until taxpayers 10 or 20 years down the road do it.
But can it be amended now to deal with it? Can you amend the Illinois Constitution?
It would require an amendment of the state constitution. You would probably, as a matter of law, have to grandfather in people who are currently receiving benefits. That, of course, will create a lot of shocks because there are some people, that there are these horror stories of people.
So you can't do anything about the current employee, about the current pensioners, the only future ones.
No, but there are people currently receiving benefits who get those level of benefits because in some cases they've actually only held a job for a day or a week or 2 weeks to qualify
So
for
try
a
to
much
do
higher
something about that in the amending of the Constitution.
level. Yeah. Well, and this problem was tackled at the federal level about 20 years ago and done so successfully.
We're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, Joe Morris. We're running out of time again, but quickly, on the end of the show, let's turn over to the national issues. Can the Republican Party really complain about the spending or taxes of the federal government after the horrendous spending that occurred under George Bush for those 8 years?
It had better do so. It had better.
Doesn't it look hypocritical and two-faced?
It had better complain about that spending, but in the process of doing so, it had better admit that George W. Bush and Secretary Paulson were part of the problem.
How's Barack Obama doing? 90 days? Would you say he's doing pretty well?
Well, actually, at this point, we're more than 100 days out. Well, I think that
Stand corrected. We're taping this on April 19th, so I thought that was 90 days. January 20th.
President Obama is moving this country at an accelerated pace, well beyond the already horrific pace set by President Bush.
Too much spending, too many taxes,
and too much government control of too many sectors of the economy. When the United States government is now running auto manufacturers, there's something very seriously wrong.
Was the bailout a mistake?
Serious mistake.
And that was a mistake made by Bush and the Republicans and Treasurer Paulson, right?
It certainly began with them.
And it's now been compounded by Obama signing up.
Multiplied by them and the octopus-like extension of governmental control into so many sectors of the economy worries me even more because spending can always be stopped. But when government has taken control and built in contractual obligations of the kind that have now occurred since January 20th, it's awfully hard to dismantle.
Who's the leader? Sarah Palin? Is she the leader of the Republican Party? Tim Pawlenty, Bobby Jindal, Mark Sanford, Governor Sanford?
Of South
Carolina.
These are all leaders of the Republican Party.
Pick one. Give me
two of the most important are Congressman Eric Cantor of Virginia and Congressman Paul Ryan of Wisconsin. The latter, a leader on tax issues, the former a leader on spending
Could Paul
issues.
Ryan be a Republican presidential nominee in 2012?
After 2008, you have to say all things are possible. I would certainly expect Paul Ryan to be a candidate for president within the next decade or two. I would expect Eric Cantor to be a candidate for president within the next decade or two. I think that Governor Palin, Governor Sanford, and others may well be candidates as early as 2012.
School voucher, school choice, should that be the rallying cry for Republicans nationally as well as in the state?
It should be one of them, and certainly an issue on which to point out what seems to me to be the very disappointing hypocrisy of President Obama. We have learned empirical evidence that we've gained, including in the District of Columbia, shows the importance of voucher and other school reform measures, the importance of charter schools and the rest to improving performance. Competition works.
And Democrats are killing that program?
Killing it.
And Republicans are saying nothing.